the high courts of Cameroon. And where you're not satisfied with the decision, then you can actually go to the appellate jurisdiction. From the high courts, you would have to move to the Court of Appeal. And if you're not satisfied with the Court of Appeal, of course, you move to the Supreme Court, which is the final point where the decision will be made. However, despite the fact that generally it's a criminal matter which you will be looking at in case of breach of performance rights, you could still have situations of, I think, breach of contract, because the performer in Cameroon only becomes a performer where he has been granted rights by the copyright holder of the work. So if you have to perform a particular piece of work, then you definitely have obtained rights or permission from the copyright holder, and this is generally through a contract. So where there is a contract, then we'll be referring to a civil jurisdiction, and in a civil jurisdiction, then you would understand that in Cameroon we have it's a biracial nation, because in Cameroon we have the common law systems which operates, which is inherited from the British common law system and parts of the laws of Nigeria, which are still used in Cameroon to date because of our colonial history. And they also have the French courts, which generally use the French civil procedure, which was inherited from from France itself, which was one time the colonial master of Cameroon. So you would have to first of all know the conflict of laws, which jurisdiction you find yourself in. Are you in a common law jurisdiction, which is generally the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, or you are a French jurisdiction, which is generally, well, I can't cite them, but there are 8 different regions in number. So you first of all know which jurisdiction is competent in Cameroon, because within Cameroon there are 2 different jurisdictions for civil matters. There's a common law jurisdiction and there's a civil law jurisdiction. So aside that, where there's a breach of contract of a performance, where a performer actually enters into a contract for performance and there's breach of contract, you could also look at alternative dispute resolutions such as mediation or arbitration. For arbitration, we actually have, there's a court of arbitration in Cameroon, which is the JICAM Court of Arbitration. That's the lone court for now, which I know of for arbitration in Cameroon. You also have what they call SONACAM. SONACAM in French is actually Société Nationale Camerounaise de la Musique, which is like Cameroon National Music Corporation, which is a body of artists or union of artists who have come together for their own common good in Cameroon. So where there is a dispute or a breach of a performer's rights, then the performer could also seek redress by contacting SONACAM, where SONACAM is actually going to look into the matter to see who is at fault and who is not at fault, to try to mediate. SONACAM doesn't actually have an arbitral tribunal, so you would always seek them maybe in a situation of mediation or conciliation. But we should understand that the decisions there will be binding, they could only be guiding to both parties. So if I think that is going to do for elements of the fora for redress of breach of a performer's rights. I'm going to talk about the second part, which is the legal challenges in performers' rights in Cameroon, which again, I would say is similar to what my co-panelists from Tanzania and from Nigeria have talked about, because, well, the first thing is in Cameroon, there is no district law there's no distinct law on performers' rights, because like I said, the performers' right is actually a neighboring right to copyrights. And so the laws generally focus more on copyright protection and not really the performers' rights. So the performers' rights is just a neighboring law. And so to the fact that they don't have a distinct legislation that regulates that sector, I think there is a lot which is lacking in the law, which still needs to be fit in, because you don't really have substantive provisions to protect the performer in this law. The focus is on the copyright holder. The second part, which I would like to talk about, is the fact that they don't have, in Cameroon, we still don't have Well, we do have them, but we don't have sufficiently trained lawyers in intellectual property or generally entertainment law who understand the field, understand the topic, understand the domain to be able to properly guide performers on their rights. So we have lawyers who are mostly into general practice or a few into corporate law, and very little population or very little percentage of them are into intellectual property rights to really understand how to guide performers. So there's this general aspect of the lack of the lack of lawyers, if I can put it that way, lack of lawyers who are skilled in the domain, who can properly guide these performers to understand the rights and is the fact that generally performers in Cameroon are, should I say, they are unaware of the fact that they actually have these rights. Most people, just get excited to get on projects. They don't really bother to verify if they have signed contracts. They don't, even when they have signed contracts, they don't really bother to make sure that they are actually read and understood, legal experts in that domain. So there's this unawareness that performers generally have in Cameroon, and it actually makes them to easily find situations in which their rights are infringed upon. And believe me, most often they even go without seeking any redress. So some of them don't even know what to do when these situations arise, you know. And another point I'll talk about, which has already been spoken about by other co-panelists, is the aspect of collective management organizations, which we don't really have in Cameroon. I talked to you earlier about SONACAM, Société Nationale Camerounaise de la Musique, which is the body or the union of of music artists in Cameroon. SONACAM is the only authorized collective management organization in Cameroon for artist rights.
Daniel, please,
However,
can you wrap up? We're way past beyond the
oh,
5 minutes.
sorry. Let me just wrap up. However,
Okay.
SONACAM still lacks a lot of the mechanism, within which they could actually follow through to protect or to ensure that licenses are obtained or royalties, whatever, are actually followed up as collective management organizations are supposed to do. So yes, I don't know because of time, but generally, the last aspect I just want to talk about, which I spoke about earlier, is the fact that in Cameroon we have different jurisdictions. There's a common law jurisdiction, the French law jurisdiction, and so in a situation where a performer's rights are actually violated, if the performer is actually based in the French jurisdiction and the rights are violated in the English jurisdiction, he might not really know there's this issue of conflict of laws. He might not know in which jurisdiction he's supposed to maybe file an action in court to guarantee the performance to guarantee the protection of his rights. So, well, generally, I don't know. This is what I could put up for this time which I have available for me.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation, Daniel.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's been exciting listening to how similar and in certain instances different these rights are redressed in a different country. So we've had Juma from Tanzania, we've had Amanda from Nigeria, and then Daniel from Cameroon, enlightening us on how the procedures are in each country. Before we move on to the questioning bit, I want to welcome Mr. Imwamara Austin. He is he's a member of the Kabusa Choir in Nigeria, which is pretty famous in Ghana and in other African countries, I suppose, as well. Welcome, Mr. Imwamara Austin. You'd have to pardon me again. Before we move on to the questioning, we'll play our video, and then there'll be a poll that would appear on your screens. All attendees, everyone should please participate in the poll. It's a poll on the video that we're about to show you. And then afterwards, we'll go to the final bit of this webinar, which is the questioning and then the answers from the Kabusa